Welcome to the Green Lab Futures Talking Social Innovation podcast with your host, me, Scott Douglas. We'll be bringing you the conversations that we are having with industry, education and the community to help us develop and shape our views and understanding on the future roles of social innovation. We hope you enjoy. Joined with Liz Fleming. Welcome to the conversation, Liz. We're really looking forward to taking a bit more of a deep dive into the work that you've been doing, both now in your own startup, which is really exciting, and the work that you've been doing prior to that. So do you want to tell us a bit about the work that you've been doing before you got into your startup, Liz?
Sure. Thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me today. So I suppose I'll start with saying that I'm a chartered accountant. So most of my experience is in the finance area. And most of my career is actually in industry and in the energy space. And then when I moved to Gippsland 5 years ago now, I started working at the coal mine as a finance manager and then did a couple of stints in local or in government agencies down here as well. So over the last 5 years while I've been in Australia, that's been really community focused in making sure that projects to improve the economic status of the area, especially here in Latrobe Valley after the closure of Hazelwood. That was the main focus of the Latrobe Valley Authority, where I was the corporate services and finance manager there for a couple of years. And a lot of that was through grants, through local businesses, through community groups. And then also I did some work with bushfire recovery last year as well. So from all of that, and I suppose also linking in my personal pursuits as well. So being bushwalker, living rurally is important to me, and then being part of that community as well. So I think, you know, when I like to talk about the work I do, it's also, you know, your employment and your other extracurricular activities that you do to make things better and use your skills that you've learned at university and in your work to further benefit other community groups. So I also do business and community mentoring and really ensuring that people have that financial knowledge to do whatever they want to do, whether that's their own tax return, making sure that they're making money, or as far as a project is going to be beneficial to the community and is going to be on budget and deliver what it say it's going to deliver as well.
Good point. Yeah, absolutely. And so, wow, I really feel that the background that you've just shared with us and the accounting side of things is a real key focus for a lot of businesses that are exploring how they can do things better and how they can grow and scale and do all of these wonderful things, because without financial fitness, they can't do any of it, can they?
Correct. Yeah. And I think, you know, in my business now, I say to people, I put the economics into marketing. So even though you might have a great idea and, you know, everyone, you've asked all your friends and your family and they're like, yeah, it's a great idea and it's similar to what someone else is doing somewhere else in the world or another country or another state or whatever it might be. If you haven't got the right market, if you haven't done your research and it doesn't make economic sense, meaning you're going to make more money from more than what you need to put into it to make it work and happen, then you have to evaluate why you're doing it. And that doesn't mean to say that you're doing everything just to make money. Obviously, there's non-financial benefits and externalities and things like that. But if you're running a private business or even a community group, if someone's got to dip into their pocket to top it up, it's not really sustainable. So I think in terms of accounting, I was always a maths geek at school, but I think it's not so much focusing on that everything has to just make money. There's obviously other benefits and externalities, but if it's not making money, it's like, what's the purpose of it? And if you've got to continually be using your own money or topping it up or whatever, you need to either change what you're doing so that it does make money, or change it completely to do something completely different that is profitable. And we're seeing, and that's ever so prominent in times of COVID, when we can't rely on that, on next week's trading, because we might be in lockdown or whatever it might be. So all of a sudden the uncertainty becomes a greater risk, and making sure that you've got that buffer from somewhere, and your return on investment and all that kind of stuff. And that's what needs to be evaluated at the start based on whatever information you may have going forward.
Yeah, wow. And to me, that makes so much sense, within starting up businesses and startups in general, and then having known that I've made those mistakes myself. Looking back, just thinking, wow, gosh, that's a community group, first couple of startups. But and look, they're all learnings, but I think there's some really solid points there that we need to understand, those fundamental economic points around how a product can be designed and sold, or designed, marketed and sold, and that cost has to come from somewhere. It's not all done on hopes and dreams. And I think we're lulling people into this false sense of, well, we can design something really quickly, get it to market, people will buy it because you think it's cool, when in fact, no, that's not what people buy products for. They buy them for the experience that they have, the connection that they need, not these little niche type products, or services. So it's a really interesting space that we're kind of moving into, and obviously the role that your startup is playing, as the efficiency coach, is developing those efficiencies within businesses as well, and not just the individuals, but embedding them within businesses.
Correct, yeah. And I think I've got 10 years of financial month end, so 12 months every year of the 10 days across the end of the month, where all it came down to process. And what I'm working with businesses at the moment, it doesn't matter how big or small your business is, you need to have some sort of process. And for a small business, that might mean, yep, let's check the bank account, let's check the profit and loss, check the balance sheet, check how many sales and orders we did for the month, check our Instagram followers. But at least you're checking something. If you don't track anything, then it's not going to improve, and you can't make a decision quickly to change it, rather than putting your receipts in a shoebox, giving it to your accountant at the end of your 12 months of financial year, and then wondering why you're not making any money, or there's no money left over. And it's like, well, if you were doing that every month, you'd be able to make changes so that the next month was tracking towards either profitability or less loss making, or whatever it might be. So I think it's just creating that accountability. And I think the other thing is, to your point around accounting, is I was sort of lucky enough, and I suppose it was just the school I went to was very strong on commerce. We had a very strong commerce department, and so we were all encouraged to do economics from year 9. From the first day of high school, that was the first subject you did, sort of thing, or one of them. So people are scared of it because they're not familiar with it. And I'm just running some workshops at the moment on the Xero finance system. But what I'm actually also doing in that is the basics of accounting. So your assets minus your liabilities equals your equity, and that really shows how much skin in the game you really have in your business. And if that's negative, you're not doing so well. But I do want to say, I'm not all about, if you've got a great idea, I'm not going to squash you down and say, oh, well, if it doesn't make money, you can't go ahead with it. It's actually all about the process of what research have you done? How do you know it's going to work? And how do you know someone wants it? And what's the evidence for that to steer? Because if there's evidence going against it, or if there's no evidence towards your product, then why are you doing it? Just because you think it's a great idea and your 5 friends or your flatmates or whatever are going to be like, oh, we'll buy from you. Are they really going to? And I read a really good book the other day, and he was sort of saying, you want to fail fast if it's not going to go well, but also get people to lock in. So those people that say it's a great idea say, oh, well, actually, I'm doing pre-sales. So you give me 50% of what I think it's going to sell for. And then when I get this product to market, you'll be first in line. If they're not going to commit some money, then it's like, is it really such a great idea? So that was a really quick tip that I was like, actually, that's a really, you know, going to a farmer's market or just having a stall somewhere and just doing some cheap promotion. And that's what's good about Facebook and Instagram at the moment, which I think can be good and bad, because then people, oh, just put it on Facebook and it won't cost me anything, but they've just spent $10,000 buying the product in. You need to do the Facebook advertising when you've bought one product or made one and see how it goes, and then decide whether you make your 10,000 and all that kind of stuff. So it's about doing it in a measured way, and doing it, you know, if you've got 50,000 to lose and you don't mind, go for it. But if you haven't got 50,000 to invest and lose and you want to make some money off it, go and put it in the bank and wait till you've got a great idea. So it all depends, comes down to the person. Just like if you're looking to either invest in a business or take over a business, if it's not something you're passionate about, forget it. Because if you're working at midnight on something you're not passionate about, it's not going to work. So I think with all of those things, and that's what I instill in my clients at the moment, is especially with COVID, do you really want to be doing this? And if they say no, it's like, well, what does that actually mean? Do they really mean no? And can we change their business so that they still are enjoying it? Or is it time to shut the doors and do something else? And the other thing I'll say on that is, when it comes to finances and stuff, especially when people have gone from a solid job, getting a paycheck every fortnight or month, when you go to business, that disappears. So all of a sudden, your cash flow doesn't quite come in as expected all the time. And if that's just going to leave you with angst and anxiety, then maybe just working for someone else is better as well. So, you know, the startup game or the small business game is not for everybody, and that's fine, you know. But it's
Can I just jump in there, Liz?
Yep.
That point that you mentioned. So one of the conversations that I've been kind of hearing is this idea of the kitchen table feasibility, or that we used to call it the pub test. If you couldn't sell it in the pub, then it's no good. But even the kitchen table, to be able to sell it to your kind of partner that you might have a mortgage with, or you might have like a commitment with, if they, like, that conversation can't be had for whatever reason, essentially that also kind of indicates that maybe the financial viability isn't there yet. So therefore we can't quit the job. Sorry, that's a reference to another show I've been watching on Netflix. But to keep it all kind of ticking over, like that financial modeling that you were talking about is really important, and for people not to be scared of it, but to almost embrace it and see it as one of the components that drives their idea forward. Because if they don't have that financial acumen, they may not have the time when they're running the business to pick it up. And that's when someone like you can come in and support them to do that. But do you think it's better for them to have it before they go on the journey, or to develop it while they're on the journey?
I mean, they can always develop it. I mean, if you're not, and even, you know, I'm not, just because I'm an accountant doesn't mean to say I know everything about finance either. So I think it's one of those things that will develop over time. But if you don't consider it at the start and you wait too late, you're going to either have sunk money and wasted money, or just not know what path it's going to go. So I think it's got to be, you know, whether you're doing your business plan or whether you write down your one page of, okay, what are all my ideas? How am I going to sell it? Who am I going to? Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to fund that thing? And what I am seeing at the moment is people are wanting to start businesses, but they've got no capital. Capital means funds in. So you need at least, and you know, this is a real starting point. If you haven't got $5,000 to lose or to invest into that opportunity of creating something really special, then you can't. I sort of say to people, you can't rely on grants. You can't expect, if you're not going to put your own skin in the game, you can't expect some other organisation to fund that from the very start. And so that $5,000 is not a magic number, but it's just you know, it's to get some expertise, to have a session with a business coach or a mentor or anybody or your accountant, to go, well, this is what I want to do. What are the things I need to do? Even understanding what your financial commitments are in terms of your running costs of your house. I mean, people don't even know what that is. They spend on their credit card, their pay comes in each month, they pay off their credit card, they spend again, you know, and that's how they roll, you know, paycheck to paycheck. But when you're a business, you're going to have so many more other facets of that. So having that financial acumen, even in a limited capacity at the start, and factoring it into your planning is really important. And the other thing is that, you know, I've got clients that have gone to an accountant because they've said, look, I don't know, we need help. And their accountant actually hasn't helped them. So it's also making sure when you're on this journey, you get the right people around you. So it's not all the people that are going to say, oh yeah, that's a great idea, even if they think it's not, but they're not, they're too afraid to say that, or they're too afraid to be objective about it. So getting that fresh perspective from some outsider is really important as well. And also getting enough of a market analysis, you know, so again, advertising something on Facebook, inviting some people somewhere to promote your product, let them see it, let them touch it, whatever it is, and see what the response is. And ask those questions and get that feedback. You can't do anything in business without getting feedback. And I think as a society, we're not that great at asking for feedback for either fear of rejection or, you know, no one likes to be criticized. But in any type of business, or anything you're doing, you need the feedback to learn, to change things, to go, well, I'm not necessarily my target audience, so I need to go and find some people who I want to help, and making sure that it's what's needed.
I really love that point around the feedback, because like I reflect on my kind of startup micro business journey, and one of the kind of key points that changed everything that I did with the education group that I ran was I asked the teachers, so the teachers that I employed, I asked them what they wanted to be different and why it is that they would leave their job to come and work for me. And it wasn't until I actually sat down and read through all their documents that I went, okay, wow, I've got an opportunity here to make something different, to not do what is being done already, kind of in the vocational space. And I won't say that we achieved 100% of those goals, but I think that in order to get those people to come on board, to recruit the talent to help us scale, we were able to at least address 60% of those things from day one. And then we worked towards the other 40. I'll say we got to at least 80 in total. But the feedback as well, it's not just from internal, it is from your customers. So if you're if you've got your current products and services that you're offering, whether that be an email survey that goes out, or just a cold call to say, hey, we noticed that you're still buying. Just want to ask you a few questions if now's a good time, because that feedback shows the client that you care about the feedback and want to improve the product or the service. And I do think that what you said, that people don't do enough of it because they think that they'll get their feelings hurt. Or it is that they're not interested because they think their product and service is fantastic.
Well, that's the other thing. And I think the other thing on feedback is that you ask the question. If you don't ask, you're never going to know. But also, just because one person has a particular dislike to your product, if there's only one out of 100, well, you don't need to do anything about it. You know, so I think people are like, oh, well, if I ask questions and someone gives me an answer, I have to go and act that and change it. No, you don't. You have to take that information and go, okay, well, 10 people said this out of a sample size of 30. Maybe I need to look into that and see if they might be onto something here, either that they don't like about it that I can change, or it's a completely new product or service. So I've got a couple of clients at the moment going through brand new local delivery services and stuff. And I've instructed them to pick out a couple of people in the intro program to ring and use as their feedback dummies, because they're willing to give the feedback. And that's the only way you're going to know. You know, me and her talking about it is fine. But then I'm like, oh, well, I don't have a family. I'm not really your target audience. So you need to go and find your target audience to ask them specifically. And you know what? Most people are quite happy to give feedback. And Whereas other people are like, oh, but what are you going to give me if I give feedback? It's not about that. It's about helping everybody to make their product better, to serve your customer and benefit them as well. So it comes down to that generosity. And the more we share with each other, I don't know about you, but if I do, especially now in the space that I'm in, if I see bad customer service or something wrong with a product or something could be changed, I do, in a nice way, in a constructive way, give that feedback, you know.
Have you seen many local businesses really embracing that idea of feedback to help shape, improve what it is that they offer, or is it still something that they're coming to terms with?
I think it's something that we can do a lot better. And I think it's about building the feedback loop or just asking feedback into the process so that you're always looking for continuous improvement. And I think to your point before where, you know, people don't do it because of fear of rejection or they think their product's absolutely amazing. Things change over time. So just because we sold a product even as last week or 6 months ago or 3 years ago, technology is changing, our habits are changing, all those kind of stuff, and it becomes, products can go out of date just because people stop using them. And I think it's also, if you're asking for feedback, it's a way of engaging with your customers. It's rather than saying, oh, can you go and buy some more, or, you know, doing the sales pitch to them every time you see them or on every email and every social media. It's inviting them to say, well, if you've got some feedback, good or bad, let us know because we're happy to oblige. And some small businesses do it really well. And I think it's just the ones that do it really well have the higher customer engagement levels. So I would say that correlation is quite strong. Because then also, even when you don't ask for it, customers are going to come to you and give the feedback, whether it's good or bad, but they feel comfortable that you're going to receive it in such a way that it's not going to be the demise of you. And I think as business owners, you really have to learn to take feedback some on the chin, and again, to have that mindset of just because someone's got that opinion or that preference, you don't know what's influenced that. And you've just got to go, okay, am I going to do something about it? Yes or no? If it's a one-off, or I say to people, you get one bad thing, maybe, you know, look into it, see what the issue was. If you're starting to get 4 or 5 or 10 of the same kind of feedback, then maybe you really do need to start investing more time into making that improvement, or going back to those people that have provided the feedback and asking them, really doing that deep dive of, well, why do you think that? Is this just a bad experience? And then they've absolutely lashed out on their feedback. You know, I think of restaurant reviews on TripAdvisor and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. It's feedback, you know. And so some of it we can't control, but if you've got a good engagement from your customer base, then asking for feedback shouldn't be an issue. And also, some people don't want to do it and some people do. So again, you know, be mindful that if you send out to your whole database of 1,000 customers and only 5 come back, well, so be it, you know. You can't control that, but if you don't ask for it, you may not get it. So and I think it's a valuable way of assessing the functionality and the purpose of your product or service, and is that whatever you're offering still solving the problem that you created the service or product for in the first place? Because that can evolve as well.
Absolutely, that is a really good point that you made there, because the idea that we sit in these ivory towers and design products and services for the market that sits beneath, if we lower ourselves back down to be at the market's kind of eye level when asking these questions, gosh, that feedback can be what keeps your business alive, because people keep coming back. They know that they can chat to you about the things that either make your business good, or the things that they know that they can help to support to make your business better. And just over like the last 12 months, we've seen so many businesses pivot to, well, now we need a website. Now we're on Facebook. I'm gonna take a selfie of me, and that's my business. Social media, like we're now seeing this kind of digital transformation happening without really understanding what digital transformation actually is. Do you see businesses spending, or are you hearing of businesses spending more money on their digital content now than before?
Yeah, I mean, the small businesses I'm dealing with, they don't have the luxury of hiring someone to do their social media. So normally it's the small business owners are the face of their social media. But I think it's definitely, I don't think I've got any businesses that don't have social media, because also that's a way of providing instant feedback. If and it's not always the case. It depends on what time you post and all that kind of stuff. You can't say, oh, well, that didn't go well because no one liked it. But what we are also seeing, and this is sort of a bit of a reverse feedback in a way, of people need that prompt, especially regionally. Well, this is what I'm seeing. If you're not posting on Facebook or Insta every day, people are forgetting that you exist sometimes, so they're like, it's not top of mind. Everyone's busy. There's a million things going on. They're scrolling through their Insta and they're like, oh, that's right. Yep, I'll pop down to that shop, or oh, I'll go and get that. Yeah, I've been meaning to get that. But without those prompts, and I think that's the opportunity for business owners to really be engaging in that. And that's what they're investing in, to go, well, we're going to nurture our customers to, and I talk about training the customer. What do you want them to do? How often do you want them to come in? When do you want them to come in? How accessible do you want it to be? Some clients don't have a website because they're like, no, we just want to service the local community and we want them to physically come to our shop or come to our market once a month or whatever it may be. So I think also it's taking that feedback and also showing back to your customers that you are understanding them better and you're taking on board the feedback that might be given. And I don't mean that on an individual basis. That's also another good point as well. If someone, especially now with social media and stuff, people are giving that feedback quite readily through DM and expecting a reply straight away. And that's probably one real struggle that a lot of business owners have, because it might be at 10 o'clock at night. They're scrolling through their own social media, but they're like, do I respond? And how do I set those boundaries? And that's probably one of the biggest struggles that's really come to rear its ugly head during COVID, because people are expecting a response straight away, and being able to do that, have your automatic reply saying, hey, thanks for your message, we'll get back to you as soon as we can, so that people go, oh, cool, they've seen it, or it's going to get replied to. But that's one thing that's been really difficult. And then also when people have, due to the stresses of lockdowns and being in the situations that we are, people might have sent through feedback that's got a bit angry, and then that can really break a small business owner. So being able to respond and say, hey, thanks for your feedback, really sorry it happened, and then people are expecting a refund or something like that, and it's like, well, you've already consumed the product. And trying to navigate that can be really tricky, and staying strong. So I've worked with a number of clients where they've rung me and gone, how do I respond to this? And I've just said, we don't want to give them any more response than they need or that they deserve. They may be angry, and that's happened, and we acknowledge that, but then we just move on.
Sure. Sorry, I've got to pause this again. Sorry, Liz. Alrighty. So I think what we've been able to kind of have a really good conversation about is this, not just the role of financial fitness, but also how businesses can be better taking on feedback to shape what it is that they're doing. Because when we kind of go into this scale theme, which is, all right, we've got something good financially, it makes sense, or it's ticking boxes, and we've got that on our side, we can start hiring, but we can't start hiring and paying until everything lines up. We can't just scale based on I've got a good idea and I've got money in the bank. Do you hear people doing that often, Liz? Like they accelerate their business without even testing the market?
Yeah, yes, people do, because they might be doing it for another reason. I've got a client at the moment who wants to scale and hire another team member, but the reality is there's not enough cash coming into the business to pay that team member. But the motivations behind doing that is to free them up of their time.
Businesses need to line their ducks up before bringing on new team members or moving to new sites, or even selling new products. Like you can't just kind of bring a new product into the inventory without any product research, market research, understanding if it's going to actually sell. But to that point, to scale and to hire new people, like what are some of the purposes that you're experiencing people are scaling for?
Well, one, they're wanting to bring in new skills that they don't have, or just go back to their core skills and areas of expertise. So at the moment, I've got one business owner who's done her whole new software, her whole ordering program, her sign up, her onboarding, her CRM, and she's learned that from scratch as she's gone along. So she's done a great job. But now that she's created that process, she's like, I just want someone to come in and do this each week for me, and not have to look at it again. So I think when it comes to scaling and that growth plan, whether it be a new product, new hiring, it is about what's the purpose, but it's also what's the process. So just because, and especially it's the first person you hire is the hardest, because it's from you as a business owner, it might be your partner or whoever's been there from the start, and then you're trying to get your information out to that new person, and you want that new person to do it exactly like you would. And so if you don't have the process behind it, of how you want things to be done or how things are currently being done, then it's also very hard for that new person to come in, unless you want to give them full autonomy, which is very rare. So I think it's about identifying that process. And some people wait until they get the person on to develop that process together, because it's easier to bounce ideas off someone else. And it's also about setting expectations. So whoever that person is coming in, or whatever it might be, what are you wanting them to do? And, that goes from both ways, because they've come on board, they've taken the chance to be part of something that you've created or developed right from the start, and you've put all your blood, sweat and tears in, and no one is going to work as hard as you. So, you can't expect, just because you're replacing half of yourself with a new person, you can't ring them at midnight because you're still on the computer doing your business stuff at midnight. So it's about setting boundaries, setting expectations, and then it might also mean, which is quite confronting, a change to your work style and the way you work as well. So it can force you to be more accountable, but it forces you to do, if you said you're going to do something on Monday, and normally like, oh, well, if it doesn't really need to be done by Friday, but if someone else is relying on that internally within your organization, you better have that done on Monday. So it actually completely changes the dynamics, and I'm not sure people are prepared for that. They like the idea of, oh, well, I won't have to do as much work, and I won't have to do that job that I don't like doing, and I'm back to using my skills and the things I enjoy. And I think the other thing is, when you're scaling, is don't create a job with all the bad or shit jobs that no one likes doing. Don't go, oh, where's my list of jobs? Do your list of all your jobs, but then don't pick out the bad ones. Group them together into either a certain skill set that you either don't have or you want to duplicate. And then make sure whoever you're getting on board, I mean, here we are just talking about hiring, but that it complements your business. And if you want someone to work 3 days a week and they're saying, oh, well, I'll do it on the weekend, if that doesn't work for you, you've got to be upfront about that, because it's going to become more of a headache than what it currently is. And the other thing is, with hiring someone, is they get paid before you. So, you hire someone, they've done work, you've agreed their wages or what salary, that cash needs to be in the business somewhere, and they get paid before you. So that's a big shift as well. It's all right when it's just you and your family, and you'll go, oh, if there's no money this week, I'll just have noodles for lunch, that's fine. But if somebody else is in there on a wage that you've agreed, you are their employer, and there's rules and regulations and employment law that you need to follow. And I have seen a few businesses, not clients, but I've seen a few people go, oh, well, I'll just pay them less, or I'll pay them a bit of cash and I'll catch up next week, and things like that. And again, it comes back to that financial planning and can you really afford? So you might be able to afford this week and this month, but you're hiring someone on a long-term contract or an open-ended contract. You need to be able to pay them that amount every month or every week, regardless of whether there's money coming in, whether you're selling products. They become your priority in terms of cash flow. So
Mm.
it sounds a bit harsh, but I think not enough people, they scale too quickly, they hire too quickly, and they get into a bit of trouble. And then they end up laying off people because that's their only option. And then they're back worse than square one than what they started before they hired. So I think you've got to plan out and do it as a phased approach, is my advice around that as well.
Yeah, that's awesome, Liz. And we did cover a few topics, so I'm sensing a collaboration and some future conversations around this work, because I think what I'm finding is that we've got this kind of scope at the moment within social innovation where there are people that are kind of working through the process. There are people that have been involved in this space before, and they're sharing knowledge. And then there's people that are coming in with no knowledge of either working in the space or just not having I suppose an industry background. And when they're applying that to some organizations that we're seeing, it's not working out. And the conversation that we're having within this social innovation space is how we can help those organizations as well that are looking to scale because they have a good cause that they want to run with, or a really dynamic for-purpose business, and the opportunity is there for them. They need a few more of these pointers to help them along the way. So thank you very much for jumping on the conversation with us today, Liz. And we'll give the Efficiency Coach a bit of a plug.
Thank you.
And yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
Cheers.